if anyone understands cultural change, especially like in an organization, it's me. Like I went through that classic thing of everything was yay, then down, about ready to leave, wanted to come home, called, my mom and said, I'm done. And she's like, just stay, just try. Um, and then going back up the curve where this is amazing and I didn't really want to come home.
All right, so Stacey, it is absolutely awesome to have you on the show. I have been so lucky enough to meet you in person. Like, I
Mhm.
just love it when the stars align and I meet a cool LinkedIn person and then we actually get to meet in real life. And so I'm very lucky to have actually met you. So, yeah, just to get us started, tell people just a little bit about yourself.
Oh, well, great. Thanks for having me, Candace. And yeah, it was very serendipitous that we met, that we were on LinkedIn together, and I highly encourage people like, hey, when you're in town somewhere and you're LinkedIn to somebody, reach out. You never know. So I happened to be in her neck of the woods for a convention and we met in person. So it was just wonderful. And yes, it's always fun to meet another L&D practitioner. Uh, we're very like-minded in thinking. So where I live, I am in Orlando, Florida. I have lived here my whole life, except for a stint that I might talk about later that was not here. And I kind of consider myself a business consultant, but how I help businesses is through their people practices. So the people practice can be the HR administration side, or it can be through the L&D side, the learning and development side. And sometimes it's organizational development. It's like, how do you get the whole big system working together? So that's what I kind of do in my daily life, is helping businesses kind of figure out what the problem is and then fixing it and helping them fix it. And sometimes it's processes, sometimes it's people, and sometimes it's just painful. That's not a good way to end, is it? But the peas came up. The peas came up. So that's me in a nutshell.
Yes, yes, and that makes sense, and I love that approach. So it's not just about, the people. You actually look at it at the whole thing from a holistic
Mhm.
mindset. Yeah, so I think that's super powerful, and I coach people through that all the time, like having that enablement mindset. So not, learning because I'm so strong in
Yeah.
learning. Like a training's not always the answer, and it could just be holistic. And I know you and I have dive deep into
Yeah.
this. Okay, but we won't go down that rabbit hole now. So let's do, and it's always my favorite part, let's go all the way back in time to younger
Yeah.
you. What was your first, and I won't call it career, but your first job, like where you earned your first dollar?
Yeah, so this is a company that pretty much everybody knows now, but at the time it was only in the Southeast, and that was Chick-fil-A. I worked at Chick-fil-A, the fast food restaurant. So back in the day, I mean, you can see from the camera, I'm not a young person anymore, but that's okay. But back in the day when I worked for Chick-fil-A, there was no food courts yet. Like they were really one of the first companies who kind of went on this model of having a restaurant inside the mall. So we had a restaurant inside the mall, and I worked there, and the whole, if you go to Chick-fil-A now, it's my pleasure, all that good stuff, and everything's very complicated. Like, if you go through their drive-through, it's like a military operation. Well, we didn't have that. We didn't have the drive-through, so it was all. I just worked at the front on the register, and I also cleaned up the kitchen. You want to talk about a very insightful learning initiative, is clean up those peanut oil
Tell
fryers.
us details.
Yeah, I smelled like peanut
Give us the
oil for
details.
at least the year I was there. Um, and there was no automation at the time. Like everything was, we had very the cash register, so you had to memorize everything, like memorize how much everything cost. And I remember, this is going to date me, the Chick-fil-A sandwich was $1.85. And so I'd have to put 185 in the register and then whatever else it was. Then I would yell to the person behind me what I wanted. I want one sandwich. We had our whole little lingo going on, as every company does. Um, and then they give me the order, and of course I do the change and transaction, but everything was very manual, and it was what I loved about it. I've always loved guest service. I've always loved helping people, but that was kind of my first guest service job. Um, Chick-fil-A was great for a high schooler because they were closed on Sunday. So that really helped. Like from a, getting, you had one day where you could kind of study, do whatever you needed to do. And, it was just so great earning a paycheck. That was something interesting. And I've never forgotten, I got into hospitality later on too, into the restaurants, but that experience of breaking down the kitchen, washing all of those dishes, and it was hard work. It really was, and I've never forgot it. I've never forgot about taking a piece of equipment that's bigger than me. Something that's hard to wash that maybe not everybody thinks about is those iced tea canisters. The huge ones. Those things are heavy and they're very awkward. So I remember that. And of course, like I said before, I remember the fryers. And I also remember Christmas time. So as you can imagine, there were only 3 food places in the mall at the time. And we had lines out the door from as soon as we opened until my shift was over and someone would take over for me. And it would just be hours of how can I help you? How can I help you? So I was very much learning how to take care of a lot of people quickly, but never give up on guest service, never give up on quality of food, or quality of your product. I mean, if you want to kind of put my older Stacey on it, is that your product matters, what you do matters, do it with integrity, and just help people. Just help people as much as you can. And sometimes not every job is perfect. There are aspects of every job that amount to washing that iced tea canister.
Yes, tell me some of the harder days. Was it the customers or was it just the grueling hours? What was, I mean, because I can definitely say stories of when I was a waitress.
Oh, I bet.
So I'm sure there were some days that just stood out as, I don't know, a lesson.
Yeah, the hardest days were the ones where we didn't get to stop, where it was just really, in the holiday season or a busy weekend where it was just nonstop. You can't even take a break to go to the restroom really until somebody else is there, and it's like a big to do to kind of switch out people. I remember that. I also remember there's some other things. There's some dynamics. We were all in high school. So as you can imagine, the workplace was a little bit like a high school, and I didn't have the best time in high school socially. So I would say that was a harder part for me, was dealing with we're just a bunch of kids, a lot of hormones, a lot of stuff going on. Sometimes not very much adult supervision because our shift leaders were not much older than we were. Some of them weren't even older. They were also high school kids. So that was hard for me to navigate. Like the actual work itself was fine, but in a way, the politics of the place were kind of challenging for me. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense, but we can talk about that later.
Okay, and were these other kids, I mean, you were also a kid, were these kids all from your high school? Like
No,
you knew them all at
yeah,
school?
we were
No,
from different
okay,
high
all right.
schools, so it was, yeah,
Okay, okay.
there would be like two. There was, I think, 3 from my high school. The majority came from the high school that was closest to the store. And then there were some other outliers here and there. But yeah, so they were not the same kids I dealt with at school. And maybe that helped or not. I don't know. Or
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely gave you all the exposure you needed to high school drama.
yeah, oh
That
yeah,
sounds
never.
like.
It was all day long and all night long.
Yeah. Oh boy. That is tough. I would not want to go back to high
No,
school.
no, no.
Not, yeah. There's many other things I'd rather do than go back to high school. So
Me
yeah,
as
I
well.
I relate. All right. So from there, did you how many years or I don't know, summers or I don't know how long did you work there for before you moved on and what did you move on to?
I'm so I'm I'm going to try to do the short version of it. So, like I said, high school was difficult for me socially. And I was also, it's so great we talk about mental health now, but we didn't talk about it when I was in school. And I went through a period of severe clinical depression, and it got so bad that I actually ended up flunking out of school. So I dropped out of school my senior year. Not a problem academically. I was always, doing the work, and that was never a struggle for me. But there were other things going on in my life as teenagers. Just life is very difficult. I can't even imagine kids who are dealing with social media now. I think that just would have really made my situation even more difficult. So I struggled a lot between when I left high school, that was February of my senior year, until I was 20-ish, 21-ish. I really didn't find myself. They were doing a lot of mental health interventions with me, but again, we weren't really talking about it. I didn't really talk about it. Somewhat, I was ashamed of it. Like, all my friends were going off to college, and I chose not to because I was just kind of afraid college was going to be a repeat of high school, and mentally I was not ready for that. So I started working, but almost the same patterns were repeating themselves from high school to the different jobs I had. So I really struggled from about 17 to 20. And what happened when I was 20, and remember I live in Orlando, Florida, I started working at Walt Disney World. And I'd always loved Disney. When you grow up in Orlando, someone in your family or a friend works there. So you're going to go. And so I'd always gone to Disney since I was a little kid. And I was in band in high school. So they have a very robust program that local high schools can come and play. And then you get free tickets. So we would I don't know how my band director talked the people our administrators into it. But they would get a bus and we'd all, go there and use our free tickets. I don't know how he sold that, but it was great. So I always loved Disney. And when I went back, when I went there when I was 20, for some reason at that point it clicked. I just loved being there when I was in my 20s or early 20s. You're just helping people from all over the world, and I was in merchandise, so a little bit of the retail part was still in me, merchandise, and then I was there from, wasn't really planning on college, and then I thought, well, I'll try, and I was kind of still having the same issues with college that I had in high school, different reasons, but for some reason that time, the guest service of it, the just being surrounded by people that I would normally not see in my Orlando life, it was just really a fantastic experience for me. So I was in retail at Epcot, and the great thing about Disney, because it's such a large company, you can bounce around a lot and get different experience, but you still keep building seniority because you are working for one company. So I bounced around from parks merchandise, then I went to hotel merchandise, then I went to front office operations, and then the greatest opportunity I had is I went to Disneyland Paris for 6 months. So this kid who has no college education, I could not speak French, which ended up being a pretty big deal. But that changed my life as well. And then when I came home from that experience, I worked at the Disney Cruise Lines when they were building the ship. So this is when they were starting. So I got to see a startup from a Disney perspective. And I think all of those things stay with me. I ended up staying at Disney for 8 years. So it gave me a big foundation of excellence, of accomplishing big things. This is huge, putting a ship together. And then just having fun too. We had fun as cast members. There was, once you kind of get in the culture, there's front stage. So that's what you show everybody. Everybody's smiling, everybody's happy. Then that door shuts and it's backstage. And we had a good time back there as well. So I was working with people from all over the world, especially when I got to Paris. I worked with kids from all over Europe. Some of them are still my best friends. And that just opened up my eyes a lot. And really, the only reason I left Disney was two reasons. In hindsight, this is a lesson for people, is my mom worked there too. And she was also in human resources. And I kind of thought I was going to go down the training road. I always loved training. I thought I was going to be a teacher when I was in high school until my life took a different path. And I was a on the job trainer at Disney. So I always thought I'd be in HR training. And my mom was in HR. And I thought, it sounds ridiculous now because there's 80,000 people at Disney. But somehow I thought the two of us were too many Olivers in the same place. So there was that element of the nepotism part. And then also I wanted to not live in Orlando after living in Paris. I really thought I would move on to a different country, a different place. And that I'm still in Orlando is not lost on me. But other things happened along the way, and Orlando is a great city overall. But that's the only reason I left Disney, is because I just, thought I would live geographically somewhere else. And mom is an impressive individual, and she knew a lot of people, and I just thought I want to make it on my own, which was,
Yeah.
Stacey should have just used like, hey, mom gets me in the door, but I get me the job. And that is something maybe, but who knows too. My life would have went a different way if I'd stayed at Disney. So that was the next big thing. And I think really I was very lucky my first 10 years of working, of 12 years. I worked for some really impressive companies. I worked for Chick-fil-A. I worked for Disney, and then I worked for another company after I left Disney called it was Hewitt Associates back in the day. Now it's like, I don't even know what they're called anymore, but it was a benefits company, and they were also kind of in their golden era. They our service levels were high, expectations were high, but they treated employees well. We treated our customers well. We delivered high quality products. So, and we did a lot of training, kind of getting back to what you and I do. All of those companies had great training opportunities if you wanted to grab them. So when I left Hewitt, I thought that's what everybody was like. And I found out, no, that is not true.
Yeah.
But
Yes, and we can dig deeper on that. I just want to go back to, because it's just my own
mhm,
curiosity, but your living experience in Paris. So, I mean, that must be, and yes, you said you don't speak French,
well,
which turned out to be a big deal.
I should,
Yeah, just tell us like a little bit more about what's it like living there. I've visited for like 2 days, so I
well,
know nothing.
yeah, happy to share about that. So the things that being an expatriate is an amazing experience for anybody who is working professionally, because basically that's what we were. We were expatriates. We were employees of the Paris park. Like, they stopped my time in Disneyland Orlando or Disney World, and then I was a fresh employee. So what was really interesting was watching the culture of an umbrella company being translated to two different places, right? So there was Disney World Orlando, which I knew, back and forth, very American. We had certain labor laws, we had certain things we did. And then in Paris, same umbrella corporation, same kind of spirit, but translated really differently. So I'll give you an example from a work experience. So I worked in merchandise and I worked at Epcot. So we did not close that store, and we did not leave that store at night till the last guest left, and we had completely restocked the store. So the store looked immaculate when the first crew walked in, right? They didn't need to do anything but just open the registers and wait for the first guest. When I was in Paris, I worked on Main Street in merchandise, and I was there like a day or two after I'd been through Traditions, is what they call their onboarding program. Um, I'd been there for a little while, and it was closing time. Fireworks went off, um, and the store wasn't set yet. We weren't done. Like in Stacey's world, we weren't done yet. And my French trainer, it was, I think, 10 o'clock maybe. She looks at her watch and she says, Stacy, it's time to go. And I'm like, but we're not done. We're not done. The store's not ready. And she's like, oh, no, it's time to go. They'll take care of it in the morning. It just blew my mind. Like, how is this even possible? What are you even saying to me?
Yeah.
So just, it was really interesting. I think it really taught me how things get translated across an organization. So that was interesting. That's the first time I'd been from home, away from home. So, that was jarring and, finding my independence, finding my voice. I did learn to speak French enough that I can get by. But those first,
Nice.
if anyone understands cultural change, especially like in an organization, it's me. Like I went through that classic thing of everything was yay, then down, about ready to leave, wanted to come home, called, my mom and said, I'm done. And she's like, just stay, just try. And then going back up the curve where this is amazing. And I didn't really want to come home, but I ended up, because my immigration ran out. So it was, in Paris, of course, if you got to be stuck anywhere, what an amazing city to live in. And we were about outside
Yeah.
of the city, an hour outside of the city. So, it was a haul and you had to do it on your day off to go to inside the city. But it just really fundamentally changed how I saw life, how I saw work, that there's balance in everything. And, you just got to try and you got to find the strength in yourself. We're all much stronger than we think we are. And I didn't go through anything that my fellow Americans didn't go through or my fellow, it was a big international program. So all of us lived at an apartment complex. A lot of high school drama there too. but like my friend from Ireland, she was going through the same thing I was going through. Like we're far from home, we have to work. Um, so being with a group of people who are all kind of going through the same struggle, that was helpful because when in high school I was the only one, at least I thought I was the only one going through that struggle. I found out later I was not, now that mental health is more talked about and I talked to my friends from high school, they were going through the same thing. I was just probably the one who had the most severe reaction and that it affected my school life. Yeah, I highly encourage people to, work outside of your city, work outside of your country if you can do it, and be open and not be pig-headed that your way is the only way. And I believe that's the biggest thing it taught me, and it's helped me throughout my career, is that there is multiple ways to accomplish the same thing. And be open to that your way may not be the best way, or maybe part of your way is okay, but that the whole thing is not, needs tweaking.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was phenomenal, and it changed me. It really did. And then when I came back, I went to college, and I eventually went back to school because I was grounded by that point. And as we know, age and wisdom help a lot, and then you find your purpose as well, and that helped a lot too.
Yeah. 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 That resonates with me so much. I've always said I'm going to push my children overseas. They can just go do whatever they want, but just go and spend some time outside of your comfort zone, because it's even just that. It's just like getting completely out of your comfort zone, getting thrown in this whole new world and figuring it out. And then when you do, it's like that, such a confidence builder, right? You're like, okay, wait, I've
Yeah,
got this. Like, I can do this.
yeah.
Yeah. So powerful. All right. So then you left Disney because of the reasons you've discussed, and you went to what it was,
hmm
Hewitt, right?
hmm
And then you were there. Were you in training there, or is that where you sort of went into HR, or just tell us, like, how you got into what you do
Okay.
now?
So I was always a trainer. Like I said, the first part of me was always wanting to be a teacher. I thought it was going to be high school history, and then I realized no, but that was later on. That wasn't for me.
I realized
Yeah.
so.
So at Disney, for their on-the-job trainers, you were picked for it and you went to a class to learn how to be an on-the-job trainer. It was serious. It was Jiminy Cricket training and it was serious stuff. And I remember going into the class and enjoyed the class, learning all those basic things about training, like, set up their schedule, have them meet everybody, blah, blah, blah. But I remember in that class saying, I don't want to be me, I want to be her. And by her, I meant the facilitator. I just knew that, I'm even getting goosebumps talking about it. Um, I knew that that was going to be for me. Like, I don't even, and I had no idea how I was going to get there because at that time I was an hourly person working in a hotel. No college behind me, no nothing behind me that said that I could do this. But I just knew that's what I wanted to do. And so left Disney, went to Hewitt. So what was great about Hewitt, especially in call center space, is they ran a call center just about the best way you can do it. Because I've been in other call centers since then. So not only were we on the phones helping people with their health and welfare benefits, we each had a project. And so we got designated time off the phone to work on something more sophisticated. So I was in charge of training, obviously, because, I was magically from Disney. I must know everything. And I just had an affinity for it. And that's all you had to really at that time. They weren't doing like official qualifications. They just said when we started, what does everybody want to do? Like there was a team building team and there was a more higher processing team. And then there was a training team project. And I said, I want to do that. And they said, fine. So I became in charge of our training to do onboarding. But then I went to a different team at Hewitt that was a 24/7 international call center. And I became that trainer. And that was quite extensive. And that's kind of the first time I jumped into the real HR side of things because we serviced PeopleSoft back in the day. So we were a 24/7 call center helping HR professionals with PeopleSoft issues. So yeah, so we were their first 24/7 operation, so it was transitioning to that. And I did all of our new hire training then. And again, I just kept falling in love with it. And then with Hewitt, I eventually left there because I got a job as a contractor. So this was my first consulting job. I'm still kind of young. I mean, I was 28 at the time. Yeah, it's all relative. Youth is relative. But I was a contractor and I was a technical trainer for a front desk system that was being implemented at they were international, but we were only doing the domestic rollout. So I would go to a resort and I would teach them how to do the technical side of it. Like click here, here's how to check in a guest. Loved that. That was great. Like that was really like running a classroom. So slowly over time, I was getting more into L&D. I wasn't kind of writing it at that point, but I wasn't, but I was definitely in front of the class doing the traditional classroom stuff. Um, and then as you find out in consulting world, lessons learned is you can get fired pretty fast. So, so we were a team, core team, worked hard, but we played hard too. And the project went over budget and they just let us all go in a 15-minute phone call. And I had always had
Wow.
W-2 employment before. So it was kind of even beyond me that this was possible. Like you could just let everybody go in 15 minutes. So in a phone call, they
Yeah.
get us all in a room, put us on a conference call and say, hey, this has been great. We appreciate all your service, but we're over budget. So today is your last day. And I was, holy smokes, what am I going to do? Because I had already, you know, I was already an adult, but I really didn't think, and this was my own mindset. I've learned a lot about this over the years. I had the mindset I would not find another job like that without having an education behind me. I really had that mindset, like, unless I got the college behind me, I, and however it is, the stories we tell ourselves that I just been, lucky before, like everything kind of fell into my place. No, I was a good employee and I was good at what I did. But when I was younger, I really had a chip on my shoulder about college and school because of my high school experience. So, um, So when we got let go, and I had this idea that, hey, I'm just not going to be able to do this without a college education, I went back to school. So I went back to school as an adult, at University of South Florida, go Bulls. Um, and it was my full-time job. So because that's what helped too with my education is I had a purpose now. I had a purpose. I was older. I was used to working. So it was my job. And with being my job, I, pretty much sailed through and, honors graduate, yay. Um, but at that time, I really thought I was going to go back into traditional education. I really was going to be an education major at first. And then again, the universe was telling me, no, this is not the path for you. So I switched my major to social science, which, in the HR and the training world, we are social scientists. That's basically it. You're trying to
Yep.
figure out how people and systems work together. Um, and then I got a job, but I got married at that point, and I married somebody who had a master's degree, and he said, well, you're going to go back and get one, so let's just do it. Let's just do it. So this is why I say all of this is because the master's degree was a master's in adult education, training, and staff development. I was there completely by accident. It was the easiest program to get into. After I got my bachelor's, I was trying to get into a different program, but you had to get all these academic things, and you had to take the GMAT and all this other mess. Well, the education, you could just kind of get in. So I filled out the paperwork. My first class was the history of adult education in the United States. And I sat in that chair. Within 5 minutes, I knew this is what I was supposed to do. Like just like it was with that Disney trainer of I want to be her. I sat in that class like this is my life. This is where I'm supposed to be. And I never had felt that confident before that I was on the right path. So adult education, you learn instructional design, you learn instructional methods, and you do touch on OD a little bit. So that's where I got the formal education behind me. Then after I left USF, after I graduated, I went to Tampa. I did live in Sarasota for 5 years. Great place, Sarasota, Florida. But we came home to Orlando because at the time I didn't think I'd get a job because Sarasota was still really a retiree town at the time. It is no longer that, but at the time it was. So we moved home to Orlando. I got my first job as a IT trainer. So I worked in IT, which that was a phenomenal experience. I went to IT trainer, and then I moved to the hospitality side because I knew hospitality. This was for a timeshare company. So then I became a training manager, instructional designer, all that stuff. And then just kind of got deeper into the training discipline. So where you're starting the administration side of it. And the biggest training job I had, I was the continuous education trainer, manager. I wasn't the trainer. I had a team doing that. I was the continuous education manager for 500 agents in 3 different call centers. So really just expanding the role from, you start off, the first thing you do as a trainer is you're one-on-one, then you go to a class, and then you just kind of keep growing where you're really in charge of making big things happen across an organization. And so that's how I got into that part of it. I just kept growing up through the training part, the HRD part, the OD part. And then when I left there, I decided to go out on my own, and it's a complete accident that I became a VP of HR, the admin side and the training side. But I believe I've talked long enough at this point.
No, no, no. I actually, I do want to ask you something because you actually gave me goosebumps too when you were like, I sat in that class and within 5 minutes, I just knew I felt so much confidence. And actually, I share a parallel story. The same thing. I was sitting in a class, a L&D person came in to explain her job, and I was like, this is my
Yeah.
life. Like, so yeah, I get that moment. And what did that feel like for you? Why were you so certain? And then, like, what made it that you love it so much? Like, what is
What
it? You know?
To answer the part about why I was so certain is because I'd been so uncertain about everything else I had tried. Like I really was I was always such a kind of fish out of water, maybe. I mean, I felt out of place in high school. I felt out of place when I tried college the first time and I was checking all my basic requirements. And this is the first time in education in a long time I felt I was curious. I knew it would be hard, especially when I got into a master's degree because I had such a chip on my shoulder about school. And I remember getting that syllabus too, going, how am I going to do all this? Right? How am I going to write these papers? And and somebody gave me some great advice. It says you take it one assignment at a time and just, get the feedback. And I had a great professor. I'd always been pretty, up until the point I had trouble, I just kind of sailed through. I didn't sail through school. I was a good student and I tried, but I always made A's and B's. And this professor called me out. Like, this is really like my first time I'm getting feedback from her, and she called me out. She's like, you are very smart, you have great ideas, but your grammar is awful. And I'd never had someone tell me that before. Like, what? Are you kidding me? But that's why I think I loved it even more, because that's really what the whole discipline of L&D is about, is helping people get better with the truth almost about what's really happening. So I think that's why I just can't explain it. Like in that class, I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do, and I will figure it out. And then what was your second question? Oh, you had two parts.
Like, why do you love it so much?
Like
So
now,
even now, and maybe not in that moment. Yeah. So you obviously you're still in the role, in the
yeah,
work. What makes you love it so much? What is it about this
you,
work that just pulls
you
you
know
in?
what I've always been about service for some reason. Like I've always tried to make people's lives better. And certainly when you get that bump when you work for a hospitality company, and I've worked for other hospitality companies as well, when you are seeing on somebody's face, you are making a difference in their life. That is so powerful. And it happens when you have a great class. um, you can just see it. You can see the transformation that people have. And it doesn't matter. I've done it with leaders. I've done executive training like you have, and I've done, hourly training. It doesn't matter the level. It's when you see the transformation, you see that they're going to do something different today, or maybe something better because of you. It is really powerful. It is really, it's to me, it's the best way to earn a living. But it's and not that it doesn't come with its challenges, but when it works, and when the company's invested in the program, they've invested in the employees to give them the tools they need to succeed. There's just nothing better, and those are the best companies. The ones that really know that it's a process, it's complicated, but they're willing to invest and get the resources and make the conditions right, so that you as the trainer or the leader of training can be that conduit to making all of that happen. It is really it versus having a different job where you don't get that immediate satisfaction, because the higher you go up, the more disconnected you get from that, right? You can kind of, and it's like when I was a VP of HR for a restaurant company, and it would be only when I really went to the restaurant and talked to either the guest or the hourly employees where I got that same kind of feeling again. Um, and that's why I love the work of L&D, because the world is changing so fast. We are the mechanism to help people embrace it instead of be scared of it and thrive in it. And that's why somewhat I'm going to get on a little soapbox here. It makes me sad L&D is kind of not given those resources, or it's not maybe taken quite as seriously in some companies, because they're doing themselves a disservice, right? If you don't have a good trainer, if you don't have a good program, you're just making life harder on you. And I've been some really fortunate places where I've seen it work, and I've been some places it didn't work really well. Um, those are the ones that make it. Those are the ones that are harder. When when you're working at a place, and sometimes it happens in consulting world too, they just want to check a box. Like literally, they just want to check a box to say, in HR world, right, it's a lot of compliance training. They don't really want to do meaningful compliance training. They just want to do enough compliance training that they can tell somebody if the lawsuit happens that, well, we gave them training. Yeah. But doing
Mm,
meaningful things, it takes more time, it
yeah.
takes more investment, but then you change the organization and then you can stop worrying about the
Mm,
little people, almost high schoolish problems, and get to the real problems
yes.
and get to the real service. So yeah, that's the
Mm,
why, man. When it works, there's nothing. And I find it in speaking world too. Like even as a speaker now, it's a very similar feeling when people come up to you at the end, like, "Hey, that really helped me. That I hadn't thought about it that way." That's almost the best thing you can hear as a
mm,
trainer. I hadn't thought about it that way. And then
yes, yes.
you're in there. I've even had people tell me too, like later, this was happening, and I heard Stacy's voice in my head. I heard your voice in my head, and that's how many jobs are like that?
I know. Yeah, yeah. And honestly, I'll get on that soapbox with you all day. So
Yeah, I know.
that's a good soapbox to be on. Yeah. Okay. And I love digging into that because, I love understanding why people love what they do, whether that's in learning or, like just spoke with someone in marketing, and it's just so nice to see people's energy come out. And and I read something, only 17%, it's like 15 or 17 depending on what you're reading, but only 15 or 17% of people love what they do. And
Yeah,
I just think that is like a
it's
travesty. Like there should be, you should just love waking up on Monday and doing what you do. And yes, of course you're going to have those hard days. It's not rainbows and unicorns, but you should mostly be loving and enjoying what you
yeah.
do. Yeah,
Life is
so
short.
that's really
Life
nice.
is short.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yes. Okay. So, and then you started your own business. So tell us a little bit about that, because yeah, running my own business. Now this is my second time around. No easy, I don't know what to say.
It's
It's not easy as
Yeah,
pie.
I think before I ran a business and I was in large companies that had big pockets, and we would hire a consultant and they would get big checks, but not most of the time not add a lot of value. I kind of thought, well, I can do that because not only would I get the big check, I'll actually add a lot of value. I'll actually do something,
Mm,
right? So this should be easy. If I'm putting myself out
yeah.
there compared to other people, this should be great. That's not really how it
Hmm.
works. You can be amazing at what you do. I know, Candice, you're amazing at what you do, and I like to think I am as well. There's much more putting yourself out there. And it's different in that you are really putting you out there. Where when you work for a company, you can hide behind the organization. If someone doesn't like what you do, it's not the personal thing because they don't have your name probably. And even if they do have your name, there's so many other people to blame. It doesn't. It's a softer feeling to it. When it's you, you have to find a way to realize that you're just not everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay. Because I've been fired before beyond that 15-minute call way back when. I've been fired from other things for just what I think are dumb reasons. They had their reasons. I don't agree with them. Um, so building up that muscle of that, it's just the flow of business. It's rarely personal, and I would say it's rarely your work. Like sometimes it can be personal because just personalities clash, and just you didn't get along with somebody on the team or whatever. That would happen in real life too, or in a employee situation. But in an employee situation, you still have your job. Where in a consulting situation, if you don't get along with somebody, you could just lose your job. Um,
Hmm.
so that was eye opening to get used to. That took some maturity to get used to that it's just business. And I have a saying because my husband also has his own business, so we have a saying that is nothing. Do not count on any money until the check is cleared, because Till that point,
Mm-hmm.
anything could happen, right? Even if I've had
Yes.
things that were supposed to be multi-years contracts and then they just stopped. They either they decided to go in a different direction. That's the famous line, or some other reason. So that the business side of it was kind of hard to get used to. I'm used to it now. I don't take it personally. I realize there's just many times there's things out of their control too that they can't tell me about. So I just need to let it go. But there's much more of a sales part of it when you're on your own, like getting your visibility out there on LinkedIn or a YouTube or whatever mechanism it is. The thing I do find empowering about it though is that you're saying what you believe. And sometimes in companies, you can't do that so much because you really do need to come, especially the higher you get. You almost can't be totally independent in thought. Say, like, I think that's dumb. But when you're an individual, you can absolutely say, like, hey, you may not say it's dumb, but you say, like, I don't agree with this policy that's coming out, or I don't agree with this research, or this isn't what I've seen trending. And no one can really disagree with you because it is your opinion. And so you can be more, the word, right? Authentic. You can be more yourself. You're not hiding behind, when you teach it from when you're the HR administrator and people want to fire someone, they'll hide behind the policy, right? They'll say, well, the policy says, well, when you're an independent person, all you have to say is, I say, and that's good enough. And there's a lot of power in that as well. And the companies I find I've been more authentic and said more my opinion, they're the ones that end up being the better clients. We end up having a great experience. The ones I have found, especially early on, where I wasn't that forthcoming and I was more still in employee role, an employee mindset, I had a more difficult time because I was kind of doing too much people pleasing. And as I've been doing this for mostly, oh gosh, it's been a while, like 10 years now. No, it's been more than that. Um, but as I've been doing this more, I'm more comfortable without like I'm more comfortable with the idea they are paying me for my different point of view. They are paying me to be a disruptor because if they didn't need a disruptor, they could find the talent inside. They wouldn't need to go and have another pair of eyes look at it. So it's okay. It's okay. And that that it is a different mindset and it's a different, or at least I would say that it's an individual thing too. But as I grew up through corporate life, I was really, taught to go with the culture. Don't, if you disagree, really do so in the most polite, obnoxious way. you know, especially like, the phrases of, well, I'm not sure if this is what you meant. No, they know what they meant. and, and you know what they meant, right? But you don't want to be seen
Yes.
as not a team player and all that stuff. Whereas a consultant, you can say, I've looked at this document, here are my thoughts. And you don't know who wrote
Mm-hmm.
it, you don't know why. And I'll preface it like that. It's like, I don't know who wrote this. I have no skin in the game here. I'm just saying from my point of view and my experience, this is what I would do or I suggest. There's a lot of freedom in that, but it's also not going to guarantee you to get the job every time. And you have to grow more comfortable with that, just in the end, it's like an endless interview. I find it's like that. It's like you're endlessly trying to get a job, where I know most of my friends who have traditional jobs, working corporations, they just hate looking for a job, right? Even, it doesn't matter how
Mm-hmm.
unhappy they are, they just hate the whole thing.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
recruiting, look,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, honestly, recruiting stinks most of the time, but they just hate
Yes.
putting the resumes
Yes.
together and doing all the other stuff that you need to do and then going through the interviews. When you're a consultant, that is your life. Like you are doing that
Mm-hmm.
pretty much 50%
Yeah.
of the time, and then 50% of the time you're doing, the great content that you do and the great work that you do. But you are on an endless job interview is what it feels like to me.
Yeah. Oh, I haven't thought about it like that. If I thought about it like that, I probably wouldn't get any more clients because I also hate interviews. I like one of my first roles when I was still in college, I did recruitment and I just hated it. I hated everything about it. Like, and I was on the other side. I just wanted to employ everyone. So I made terrible decisions. I felt bad for
Yeah.
everyone. It was not a good. It was not good. So yeah, but I see your point there. But I want to circle back to how empowering it is because I do feel like that. Like I've been posting on LinkedIn for years now, and when I was in corporate, I had to think 10
Yeah.
times about what I was putting out there, and then I'd put out a lot less because it's like, oh, is this right? What's my boss gonna think? Now it's like, yeah, I can just put out my
Yeah.
opinion, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a really nice way of looking at it. Okay, so and on this, and I love that you have such deep corporate experience and such deep entrepreneurial running your own business experience. So I would love to get your perspective on when building a career, and now it can be in corporate or entrepreneurial. But what are we not speaking enough about when building this, career work that we love?
I I think what we don't talk enough about is that there's no traditional careers anymore. There's really like you can be all over the place in your experience and in what you do. Um, I think we need to definitely re-examine what we thought were traditional things before about, you need to work at a place for a long time. Working at a place for a long time on a resume signal that they were successful at the role. That doesn't it doesn't mean anything. And somebody who's a job hopper, it doesn't necessarily mean, that was the killer word. Is like, if someone didn't have a job for more than 2 years, the paradigm I believe is shifting from something was wrong with the employee to what was wrong with the employer. Or was it just, or at least it should be broadly thought of. Like, just don't assume that it was the person that was not successful. Maybe it was a terrible place to work. Um, Maybe they had something personal happen. I think that's where we really need to change is that when you're thinking about your career, you really need to find out first what do you value the most? Like what do you need? And that can change over time. That's where I think we really miss it too, is that value can change over time. When I was younger, what I valued was experience. I valued innovation because I always wanted to work somewhere that was pushing the envelope. Um, I did not do well in places that were traditional. I worked for a real estate company. Not for me. Not for me. Um, and of course, I was really worried about, getting the experience so that it would set me up for future success. I had to value building a life, right? Because when you're younger, you just you're starting out, right? So I was more worried about foundational stuff. Now that I am older, I flexibility is a huge thing for me. My values have changed. Flexibility has changed. I'm more willing not to take a job if I think that the flexibility is going to be an issue. I still love to innovate, so I still like to work for companies that are pushing the envelope. I still love service. That was always a value to me, but it looks different now than it did when I first started. So I think we need to think about what do you want out of the working experience? And I would really love to be, and I'm going to start exploring this more, is that with younger generations, what do they really want out of work? Like really, because when I started, it was just, I needed, you work to make money. That was it, right? Really, you work to make money, and at some point you might stay with someone long enough that you would get a pension and all that stuff. That's gone. I mean, I have like a few friends that are still at Disney from when I was there, and they're probably the last that are going to retire with a pension in kind of that traditional way of thinking. But I'm curious, since that's not there, what do people value? What do they need? And I think that's what, as recruiters, if you are a recruiter, that's kind of where I would go with my interviewing questions. Like, what do you value? What do you value in a good boss? that was always my like bazinga question is who do you do well working under? Um, because you need to be in tune with that. Who do I work well with? Who do I not? And I think that's what we're missing with careers is that it's all good. And just because you're a consultant doesn't mean you wouldn't make a great employee. I was still a great employee when went back to corporate work. Um, I went in and out, and I think going in and out, I had different perspectives on things. So I think when we look at resumes and we're looking at careers, we need to just kind of forget all the old rules because none of them really apply anymore. You know, university education matters quite a bit when you first are younger and you've got that theoretical knowledge, and I'm very glad I have it, but it's not needed for every job. It could mean you spent 4 years partying. It doesn't mean like you're going to be any better of a worker. So those biases, I think, are we need to really examine them and start thinking about, okay, what does a leader look like? All that the good stuff that we're talking about. But for a career wise, what do you want out of a career? What do you financially need out of a career? There's the classic thing, what are you willing to do to get it? And that can change often. I think that's where my generation and Gen X, like we really have a hard time with that. Like we really the paradigm was like just work hard. Oh my gosh, if I hear another one of my peers say that, I'm gonna be like, no. Like work hard means different things to different people, but we're all old and sick now.
Yes.
Yeah. These these kids don't want to be old and sick, you know, and
Yeah.
they want to have a life too, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I think that's what I would give anybody career advice is, like you said earlier, find something you like to do enough to put up with the bad stuff when it happens, and then realize it is work. It's not play. But you
Yeah.
can find
Yeah.
something that makes those two things where you're enjoying your life with everything else that you have going on and be open to possibilities. Be open to possibilities. And
Mm.
I would also, I'm going to get on my little soapbox too for Gen X people, is like we need to kind of drop a lot of our ways of working too. I follow some really hysterical younger people on Instagram, and they are spot on how they tell us all our meetings are dumb, all our little corporate buzzwords are dumb. Um, so I think we could relax some too, and everything's going to be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. You must share those people with me,
I will,
please.
I will.
There, there are some really good Instagram accounts these days. I follow someone on she's a millennial mom. No, I'm a millennial mom, and then her baby boomer gran,
Oh,
you
that's
know, like
great.
the gran of her child, and then so like the gran's looking after the kid, and then we'll say something like "be careful," and then the millennial mom is like, "We don't say be careful anymore. We say what's your plan?" And so the baby boomer gran is like, "What's your plan? I don't have a plan. Do you have a plan? How's she supposed to
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
plan?"
Oh, that's
It's
great.
like, it's
Yeah,
so
yeah.
good. Anyway, oh, getting off track, but yeah, it's this generational thing. I always think we do have different priorities and different
Mhm.
experiences, right, which shaped us. But I think at the end of the day, like at everyone's core, they just want to enjoy what they're doing and like not waste their
Yeah,
lives. So
yeah,
yeah, and how that looks is different to
yeah.
everyone. Yeah. Okay. So let's wrap up. Going all the way back, let's close the loop back to young Stacey. What would you thank yourself for doing then?
I would I would thank her for hanging in there because there were some really dark times and definitely the other I would thank her for hanging in there for having faith somewhere deep inside her that everything was going to be okay because there was some kind of inner thing in me that said you know it's going to be okay. I didn't know how it was going to work out, but that so I would thank her for. I kept trying a bunch of things. I really did try a bunch of things. So I never really gave up on myself, and I think that's what I would thank her for. Is like you didn't give up on yourself. You there was no failure. There really was only different lessons that I learned, and that was yeah, I'm gonna cry because it was tough sometimes, but I never, I was like, it's gonna happen. I don't know how, I don't know when, but it's gonna be okay.
Yeah, that is that is a powerful lesson, and I'm also thankful for young Stacey.
Me too. Me too.
Okay, so now final, how can people work with you? We mentioned just before we clicked record that you have a YouTube channel, so share everything with
All right.
everyone.
Well, I love to. I always say I'm easy to find on LinkedIn because I'm the only Oliver-Knappe in all the million. So go figure. um, but LinkedIn is a great way to connect with me. I also have a website. It is Stacey. So the Stacey has an E. I always thank my parents for putting that E in there. It's staceyok.com. So you don't have to remember my complicated last name. Um, and you can get a hold of me there. The new YouTube channel is Lunch Bites and Leadership Insights. So the idea is it's a lunch and learn format because I know as a busy leader, I didn't have a lot of time for training. I didn't have a lot of time to schedule training, but I had a lot of problems. So the idea is that I solve one of your organizational problems in 15 minutes or less because you do eat lunch. I hope you eat lunch. So you can just watch it during lunch and then kind of relax for a few more minutes and then get back to the chaos that's your life. But it's very new, so you can find it either by my name or Lunch Bites and Leadership Insights. And how else can you get a hold of me? I don't know. I'm everywhere. Like I said, having an unusual name is helpful because I may be the only
Yes.
one on the planet, which is pretty cool. There were a lot of
Yeah, it is
followers,
cool.
so when I added the Kanapa, I became unusual, as we all are. But
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, because I had a Stacey Oliver in my
Oh yeah,
grade,
yeah.
and I know her from, pre
Oh my
preschool.
gosh, that's
Like I've known her
crazy.
my whole
That's
life. So yeah.
crazy. So we were destiny, but well, and I had a lot of Stacy's in my class, and certainly Oliver's a pretty common name. So, and that was unintentional. It was another happy circumstance that I decided to hyphenate my name. So, but yeah, I love to I love to connect. I love to answer your questions, especially if you have a challenge with Lunch Bites and Leadership Insights. I'd love to answer your questions. So just send me your question and I'll make a video about it. And as we said, you can disagree with me and I'm fine. I'm fine with it. but I'm
You have learned,
but I'm always
yes.
happy to help.
Oh, that is so awesome. Well, Stacey, it has been such a treat. I hope I get to see you again this year at some maybe conference or something out and about in the real world. That would be so awesome. So, yeah, keep in touch. I'm sure we're going to see each other again soon. And thank you so much
And
for
thank
being
you so
here.
much for having me. And I know our paths will cross again in person. It'll happen. It'll happen. I know. But thanks for having me,
Yes,
Candace.
it will. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.